And come to find out, Saturday morning, I walked in circles for an hour and never made it to the spot I wanted to be.
After you were thinking all those bad thoughts about
Yes,
everybody putting all this,
yes.
well, comes
You,
full
you
circle,
walk,
don't it?
yeah, and so I was walking out on the main trail on this property, and there, I mean, it's like it like glows tax on the main trail.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
you know, you're like walking out on this main trail, and like every tree has like two tacks, and like tink 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 tink
You're like,
tink.
man,
You're
somebody
like,
bedazzled the shit out of this forest.
yeah. The stupid thing is, on that spot, there's nowhere else to go. I'm like,
Yeah,
why do you have tacks where like it's a one trail and like brush on either side of you? Like you really don't know you're supposed to walk down this trail for
yeah,
another quarter of a mile,
yeah. But you
But
didn't have any tax and you got lost.
I didn't have tacks and I did get lost.
Lost, or turned around slightly for a moment.
Well, not lost. Like every time, so I'd like walk, think I'm going the right direction, and I'd pull out my maps because I was like, so I'd walk into just like a briar patch. I'm like,
Yep.
well, I'm not supposed to walk into that, so I'd stop, pull out my maps, and I'd be like, dang it, I knew where I was, and I was like, that's not where I'm supposed to be. So I was like, I kept veering to the east, and my whole thing was like, I knew if I hugged this tree line that one thing in my mind was like I didn't just want to like end up like kind of pushing through the tree line and like bumping a bunch of other hunters and stuff. So I was like, I'll just kind of like hover out around it a little bit. So I was
Yeah.
going a little bit to the east and I just kept veering east. And then I'd check the maps and I'm like, dang it, and I'd have to circle back a little bit and I'd loop. It was like a full, it was like a 30-yard looping back, southwest to get curled back into the spot because I was in this like briar ring or horseshoe or whatever.
I don't know if
And
you were
then
looking at topo, but were you drifting downhill? I've definitely done that a lot.
mm, maybe I don't think so because I definitely like went up on a couple of berms too. So there's like two berms and I hiked up those and I
Yeah.
got over one and I was like, nope, can't walk through that. And then I'd have to like I hiked down the berm to back to the west, found where I was supposed to be, started hiking north again, and then veered to the east because I was like, oh, I think I'm close enough where I'm supposed to kind of cut off because there's one spot where you cut off to get to that spot.
Yeah.
And I did it 3 times. One time I ended up down in a dry swamp bottom. So sitting in the dry swamp bottom, it's pitch dark and the grass in the swamp bottom's above your head and you have a headlamp on and
Yeah.
the grass
And
is right in your face. You can't see
you're close.
anything.
You're closed in. Yeah.
No joke. I walked in 2 circles. Like I felt like the biggest idiot in the world. So I've always like prided myself on like I could find my like I'm good with maps. Like I can find my way. I can look up. I can look at the sky. Kind of know where I was. The sky was clear,
Yep.
and I felt so frustrated. And you're carrying this 50-pound pack on because you got to stand and steps, and you got a crossbow in your front hand, and you're holding it in your arms, and you're trying to push through all this brush. And oh man, so frustrating.
Dude,
But
I can tease
learn a
you.
lot.
I can tease you, but I did the same thing. Well, mine was coming out. Yours was
Yeah,
getting in,
yeah,
so I didn't miss my hunt. I walked into a new spot, so I had a camera on one spot that I liked a lot, and then went down a little ways from there. I got in really early, so I spent some time kind of walking around. I just found tons and tons of acorns, which another problem with that. I was so excited about this great acorn spot that I was going to hunt. Well, turns out there's acorns everywhere this year, so that doesn't mean a whole lot. But I set up there, and then on my way out, I was like, well, I came kind of farther this way. If I just keep looping around, I can go back this other way, and it should be slightly shorter instead of just coming in the way I came. But that was a bad mistake. I started doing that, ran into a steep ravine, and then to try to get around that ravine, I mean, it's the equivalent of like hiking in the mountains and you think there's a path and then you get cliffed out somewhere and it's no good. But this is just like the thick woods version of that. So ran into this ravine, tried to walk around it, ended up like skirting and just going this bizarre way, just trying to get out of there and get out all these briar patches. Ended up walking this long way around, pushing through all these cedars in the dark, which is just like, I feel like it's the equivalent of, you know, when you go through the car wash and there's all those things that are just like slapping the sides of your car. If they were all dry and spiky, like walking through that. So I ended up going like an extra 2 miles to go like all the way around, or like out this other way. Just ended up like cutting through the woods to try to just cut to the road, found the road, and then walked a half mile back up the road to where I had parked. So it was frustrating.
Yeah, that stinks.
So I have not drawn my bow on public land. Have seen deer. Did have one little spike in range of me. Technically, wasn't going to shoot that one. If it's so thick, I don't know if I would have got a shot anyway. Did not get anything, but I have knocked down 2 does on private, both of which were about 80 pounds. The first one, it worked out well, perfectly as planned. The one yesterday did not go as planned. So I got down there and saw a lot of deer, but it was an interesting hunt, and I filmed it, and so I'll be putting up that video. But it was a little bizarre how it actually happened.
Why was it so bizarre?
Well, I got in I was running a little bit late. Oh, not even that late, but I got in the stand by about 6:30. And it was kind of just starting to be gray light, just because the moon never went down. The moon was still up when the sun was coming up. So it was kind of gray light. Feeder went off at 7. By 7:08, there were 7 deer standing within 50 yards of me. They were just on it immediately. And I was pinned down. I couldn't move. Like, they were right there. I couldn't move at all. Including awesome. 2 little bucks, and I was just trying to look and figure out what they were. And then there was this one doe who was acting super sketched out. And so I realized, okay, well, one of my goals in archery season is just to shoot does. Just because, in the rut, lots of other things happen. But right now is a good time to just, if I'm going to take a doe anyway, like, might as well take her before she's pregnant and, all that stuff. Just take her early. So when I saw this doe super sketched out, I'm like, okay, that's the one I'm going to take. Saw her. She was lined up at about 28 yards. I shot. I missed. I don't know what happened. I don't know if she ducked the string, if I just wildly pulled it. I just straight up missed. Whoa. I don't know. I think it was probably some combination. I was a little bit off, and then I did see her react to the string, but it's hard to tell how much they react. So I missed, and then all the deer blew out of there. I think it was 8 deer at this point. They all blew out. And then, like the predictable big rabbits that they are, they went downwind of where they all got spooked, and then one at a time started all slowly coming back up. And then that one doe was one of the last ones to come back, and she came back, and I could tell it was her because she was like doing that kind of half stompy walk, and just her head was up the whole time. She never put her head down, and was just like super, super twitchy. So I'm like, well, that's her. I know that's the deer that's super nervous. And so I watched her like make an entire lap around and waited, and several times she was like pointed right at me, and I was I had turned on my camera, turned on my GoPro, because self-filming, it adds a whole nother level of complexity, trying to get, okay, turn on the camera, aim the camera in the right spot, okay, turn on the GoPro, okay, now clip on your release, okay, now she turned, okay, take it all down, turn the camera, and so I went through that rigmarole a couple times.
I would not know.
Yeah, it's frustrating, but I don't know, it makes it more of a challenge too, self-filming a bow hunt, and that's why I'm in a place where I can use bait to do it. I'm not concerned. I don't feel bad about that at all, because if it's one thing to help provide a little bit of stability to that crazy situation, I'm all for it. So finally, she came back around, was lined up pretty much broadside, took the shot. I thought it was a perfect shot. She went down immediately, just collapsed right there. And to back up a little bit, the first doe that I shot at this place, I put it through both lungs. She just fell down right there, kicked once, and was done. Didn't run off at all, which was a little bit weird, because usually when deer get arrowed, especially double lung, they'll run off.
Yeah.
And then this one did the same thing, and I was like, that's weird, but maybe it's just all the deer down here because they're so little and wimpy. They just, I don't know, they just fall down. Um,
They must
but
not
then,
be true Texan deer, huh?
yeah, or they are true Texan deer. They're itty bitty. They're like big dogs down there. But yeah, she went down immediately, and I thought I saw where I put the arrow in, and then she picked her head back up and just went, "Meow." And I was like, oh no. And like, you feel bad. Like, you don't,
Yeah.
it's kind of sad. It's kind of, you don't feel guilty. It's a little bit of remorse.
Yeah.
But seeing that, I don't know. I think some people misunderstand hunters and they're like, yeah, you just want to get out there and kill so much stuff. And it's like, no, I think most hunters have a huge respect for anything natural because they truly understand the meaning of it. And seeing an animal suffer,
For
like,
sure.
it's disturbing. So she was lying there, and so I was like, well, that's why she went down immediately. I spined her, and that's exactly what it was. And it's the first time I've ever done that. She didn't run off, and so if I think about it, it's not like a deer that ran off to the next property that I'm not going to find. It's just I got to see some of the suffering. So I got down, walked up to her, and just pulled out my knife and finished it from there. So not how I intended to do things. Not fun to see an animal suffer, but I do think of the situation of, you know, it's tempting to be like, oh, just wait it out, she'll die. And wait it out, don't disturb the scene, versus just like, I don't know, the dove hunter in me, like, nope, walk up, finish it right there.
Yep.
I do think it was the right thing to do. So
I probably would have done the same thing. When our buddy Nate shot his first jackrabbit, kind of same thing happened. Is that he shot it with a shotgun, just like bird shot, and it kept kind of half running and then just laying there kicking and everything. And I jumped right out of the mule and ran over there and pulled the knife out and ended it then.
yeah,
So I was just like, I didn't want to sit there and watch it suffer or anything. But
yeah,
we consumed that jackrabbit and it was delicious. But
yeah.
that doesn't make me want to like, take any joy from watching an animal die and suffer.
And it really brings about like all the emotions, and this is something I talked about a little bit in that video. Like, as hunters, you feel this, like, you're successful by hitting something and you feel really excited about it. And I just think about all the times we've been, excited and fist pumping and hooping and hollering, but then you are a little bit sad to take a life. But then when you cut it up into those steaks, you're really careful and you do it right because you understand what that life means.
Yep.
And then when you eat that meal, you have a lot of respect and reverence for that meat, just because you're like, wow, I'm very personally connected to this. This isn't something killed in a slaughterhouse with just a piston going through its head. Like, I had to do this. Like, I literally had to hold that deer in my hand and finish it off. Like, I have a lot of respect for this animal. So
true.
Interesting turn of events. Not how I planned it.
Yes.
On the other side, that's, I'm kind of getting a little bit deep and sentimental about that. There was a video of Nate and I were on a goose hunt a while back. I shot one down. One of us shot one down, wounded it, and it was hobbling out in the field, and I ran chasing it, and it was the definition of a wild goose chase. I handed Nate my camera. I was like, here, film me. But then that goose, like, I couldn't quite catch it, and so I was just chasing it, trying to jump on it, and like I just looked like a total goober running around out in some wheat field trying to catch this like hobbled goose. I just felt like a total goober.
Well,
But yeah, so it's been interesting. Public has been challenging,
yes.
but interesting and fun, and I've enjoyed the challenge. Down south on private, I've enjoyed being able to put some meat in the freezer. We've got another hunt coming up that you and I and then my buddy Daniel will also be on. We'll be at a camp where we've turkey hunted out there, I've deer hunted out there, and it's a spot I'm excited about. So I think we'll be doing some more podcasts from that camp. So I think that'll be good.
I've deer hunted out there one time for doe.
Oh yeah.
Just for a day, and I mean without any luck, but so I've seen
That was the so
several
it's an
parts of the
ML
property.
it's an MLD place for people who don't know
Yeah.
what that means. In Texas, if your property's big enough, basically you can have a survey on your property that said, "Hey, we're going to have our own management plan. Instead of going by the state tags and state limits, we're going to have a biologist look at this and kind of write a total number of deer, total number of bucks, does, what we can take off this property." So they're their own management things, and they had a bunch of doe tags to use up, and I think that's how
Yep.
you were on there, right?
Yep. Exactly. So yep, there's a bunch of it was the end of their management season, so which
Yeah.
was later than most. And yeah, they still had some tags to fill, so we went out looking for them without any luck. But as I've said, if I can get on a new property and go out look for deer, there's no failure in that. It's it's all learning. It's like now, the more properties I get on, the more often I can walk onto a new property and be able to assess it that much
Yeah.
better, much quicker. Like, and I am very much amateur, like, have no clue what I'm doing yet, but I'm out there figuring it out.
Well, I think that's interesting because there are some of those things that are very active thought processes, very conscious things where you're
Yeah,
like, okay, here's a trail, here's acorns, here's a water source. But then some things where you don't even think about why you're walking one way versus another way.
yeah,
You've seen enough stuff that you just kind of know.
yeah, yeah,
And I think that's really interesting stuff that if somebody who was totally green was to go with you and they were asking, why are you doing this? Some things you'd be able to be like, oh yeah, well,
well, yeah,
look
I
at
saw
this tree.
this, I
Like
saw
it's really
that, yeah,
obvious.
yeah.
And then
What
sometimes
did
you're
they
just
say?
like,
I
it
don't
just
know.
is.
It feels
Like,
right.
just,
It
yeah.
just feels right.
And I think the more you build on those instincts, you're right. You validate what feels right and what doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
And you test the situations where you're like, it felt right, but I was wrong because of this thing that I later discovered.
Yeah, you walk into some situation and you're like, nope, never mind. And
Yeah.
it hits you straight up. But even so, that property that we were out on when we were scouting, where we hiked down that road, it's like, first of all, we like cut off into that dry river bank.
Yeah.
And we were just like, this looks good, but it's not good. There's
Yeah.
like footprints already there, things like that. And then we got back up on the road. We kept hiking out. We circled around like that whole big area, and we are just the whole time we are kind of like, no,
Yeah.
it just didn't seem right. Is those things that like back of your mind is like maybe it's too open, like they didn't have a set pattern or track, so it's like unless I had a rifle, there's no way I can hunt this giant place.
Well, and it all comes from boots on the ground type stuff too, because if
Yeah,
you just had a checkbox, you're like, is there bedding? Yes. Is there water? Yes. Is there food? Yes. Is there a way to access it that you can actually hunt? Yes.
yeah,
But then actually seeing the lay of the land, you kind of get a different feel for it.
for sure. It's two different things between, because here's the deal. There's deer everywhere.
Yeah.
Everywhere. Like there's deer that are walking up to my back fence because there's no houses built behind me yet. And there's nothing there. But
Yeah.
there's deer that walk through there. There you can find deer tracks everywhere. Like, yeah, and I was gonna say as soon as you get out of the city, but they're in the city too.
Yeah.
So that's not the deal. It's not like whether there's deer or not. It's being able to find the spot that's consistent enough that
Yes.
you can determine, hey, if I show up here one or two hunts, like there's a good chance of one walking by this spot at, bow distance, and like how do you get those odds high enough? And that's what I'm still trying to figure out, and I will be for a while. But that's it. It's not
Yeah.
if there's like you can go to any public private property and you're gonna find some traces of deer. It's just when you walk out there, is it like scattered deer traces, or are you finding like, oh, there's an actual trail that I see like really fresh scent or like really fresh tracks on and poop and things like that, and how many different size prints are there, and you're just looking for all these different things that pop up that you wouldn't even think about because when you first walk out there, you're just like, deer tracks. I'm gonna hunt right here. Like if
Well,
you did that, you get out of your car and there's the trail right there. There's deer tracks
yeah,
50 feet from your car. I can guarantee it. You can find some somewhere.
yeah. No, and you're right that it all comes down to, it's not just are there deer and is there sign. It's how you read that, predict it, and make educated guess from that.
Yeah.
It's the difference between looking on Wikipedia and seeing that Texas has an average annual rainfall of such and such inches versus being a meteorologist and being like, yeah, it's gonna rain Tuesday. Like, that's the difference.
Yes.
One is looking at aggregated, like, total collective sign, and the other is being able to make educated decisions based on it. So
Yeah, well,
I think you're right on the money.
It's the average rainfall for Texas versus it's gonna rain on Tuesday in Fort Worth, Texas at about 3 o'clock, you know.
Yeah. That's
So,
that's
like,
the
that's
mature
thing.
hunter's mentality.
Yes.
Well, as you've been hunting on public this year, and as I've been doing a little hunting on private, have there been any new pieces of gear that have either pleasantly surprised you or let you down, or just anything learned through equipment? I always kind of like to do a not deer feature, a gear feature. A deer feature is good too, but a gear feature on this channel, just because I do a lot of gear.
It's the deer gear feature.
Yeah, I think somebody's already got a channel named that. I was looking for that the other day. Yeah, no, it's a good one.
Deer gear.
Deer gear. But is there anything that you found that's either been like total crapped out on you and surprised you, or anything that you're like, huh, what do you know? That actually works. Anything interesting like that?